Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today I'm opening the show with a special guest, somebody who is an eminent Nigerian and a major leader on the international stage. I'd like to welcome to Inside Sources the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed. Welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you very much.
As a matter of fact, not only does she have a GCON, she was also a special advisor to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, then became Minister for Environment to President Buhari before she was named in 2017 as the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. I think that by the time you finish next in 2026, you'll be the longest serving Deputy Secretary General.
Yes.
Because the longest serving so far was the first guy who spent 8 years. Probably going to spend like 10 years. Exactly. So let's start from that point. How has it been? Both of yourself and the SG, you have about 1 year. You're going to be leaving at the end of 2026. How has it been, facing the huge challenges that the world is confronted with as Deputy Secretary General?
Well, first, humbled to have taken up the position, and it is one where you support a leader who has a vision. Coming into the UN, it was always on the basis of how we are better equipped to deal with the many resolutions and expectations of member states. And coming in at the beginning, that's what we set out to do. We had the SDGs to implement, but we also had, a mandate from member states on some reforms. And so we were set on that track. And then very quickly came COVID.
Yeah.
And just when we thought we were getting over COVID, came Ukraine. And just when we thought we were getting over Ukraine, Gaza, and complicated by many more conflicts, as in Sudan and other places. So it's been a roller coaster. If you add to that climate change, which has become more intense and more frequent, and then the geopolitical tensions that we see today. I mean, powers are asserting their authorities. Economies are growing. You can see that there is clearly a change in the dynamics that we see in the world today. But we are equipped. We're equipped with 193 member states. We're equipped with a secretariat that has expertise. We have agencies, funds, and programs and a footprint around the world. We have a toolbox full of resolutions, and they include the Paris Agreement, the SDGs, more recently the Pact for the Future. So it has been one of navigating very difficult times, convening, keeping our voice alive to the Charter and the expectations of hold on to the values, the principles, international humanitarian law. Right. And so I think that, it continues to be a challenge, but the world will always expect us to do more.
Clearly. I was going through some of your previous statements, and you did say about the significance of the UN at 80. You said that the Charter is still our guide, the SDGs are toolbox, and peace, dignity, and justice for all, our shared purpose. Now, many people will say that if we didn't have the UN, would the world be different from what it is today?
I think so. This is really an institution that is governed in a way to serve member states and those on the expectations that member states are serving their people. Our leaders are serving their people. They are implementing their constitutions, human rights. Everybody's, right to development, as I said, dignity, justice, is it there? And I think that's really what we strive to do. If we were not here tomorrow, what would happen? Many countries would not have issues that are visible at the United Nations, would not be visible anymore.
True.
And that would say you put them in the dark, you'd leave them behind. And when that happens, terrible things go on. The war in Sudan may not be given the same visibility. What is happening in Myanmar would not be given the same visibility. We would not convene to try to get a solution. It's not that the solution can be gotten immediately. These things are very complex. By the time you see what you're seeing in Ukraine, in Gaza, in Sudan, you have to trace back what really has caused these conflicts to be. And for that, you need to, first of all, get a ceasefire. But in the course of getting ceasefire, negotiate our way back to peace. That's very difficult.
It's very difficult, and that's.
I think that, but this is the place we convene. for solutions that are huge challenges individually, sometimes collectively, that can only be resolved by a number of parties. It's international collaboration.
Right.
That's what we do. I see it as a global town hall for our village. We have come far in 80 years, and to say that we want to go back doesn't make sense for all those who are still aspiring to have a world that is more equal, more peaceful, and fairer in the share of prosperity.
Okay, so that leads me to the question: how do you manage both yourself and the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, the human element of your work? We see a lot of conflicts and wars and killings and deprivations in Gaza, in Ukraine, in South Sudan. How do you manage the emotional toll of the fact that you carry the burden of an organization that the whole world is looking up to solve these issues? How do you manage that emotional burden?
Well, I mean, it's what gives us sleepless nights, but it's also what wakes us up the next morning, together with the colleagues that we have in this institution in the different places, whether it's a humanitarian worker or it is a development, our peace missions, peacekeeping missions. We get up to do the job to try to address those issues. That gives you some hope that there's still an opportunity. You have to keep hope alive. You cannot come and say to a person, well, I've given up and this is too heavy for me to carry. Well, then you better leave the job. But we don't. We believe that there is an institution here that we can lead, we can leverage the expertise that we have, the political clout that we have from our member states to try to find peace. It gets you up the next day. That's what keeps moving. Of course, you know that as a Nigerian, we live with faith.
Of course.
So we do our best.
Very resilient.
And we try to continue to do it. But it is, in each case, the Secretary General has been through a life of challenges, from when he was very young to how he negotiated his way to being a prime minister to heading up the humanitarian agency and meeting with. So, we have in the course of our life gained networks, gained many exposure to much and expertise, and you use it. This is what you use. You draw on your path and your friends and colleagues and networks that you make to try to navigate the crisis one after the other. And they come all at the same time. So in a day, you can be talking about Sudan, and then you can move to Latin America, and then another crisis in SIDS. This happens on daily basis, particularly with the Secretary General, who he got elected to the post. For me, I came to be his deputy. Yes, he has a delegation. He's one of probably the first Secretary Generals to really delegate to a Deputy Secretary General, the development side of the House. But that's, his struggle is even more. What you do as a good deputy is you try to make sure that he shoulder some of it.
And you came prepared because you actually were special advisor to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on the issue of sustainable development goals. So you were quite prepared to. I was
prepared by Nigeria. In every experience that I've had at home, I've always said that if I had not had the experiences that I did as a government official dealing with the National Assembly, working with governors and local government chairpersons, I wouldn't have been able to engage with the General Assembly here, with the work of all the other agencies, funds and programs, with the civil service. We are a civil service, huh?
Right.
We're just
international civil service, right?
And I think that prepared me. And what was, of course, very important was the whole engagement and negotiations with member states on the Sustainable Development Agenda.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about the UN at 80 initiative of the Secretary General, but I wanted to start with his advocacy for the reform of the Security Council. He's spoken quite a number of times about the fact that, this is something that ought to be done. Do you have an idea whether, because this subject has been on forever, do you have an idea, whether this can happen at all? And if it's going to happen, do you think Nigeria, looking at Nigeria's role in international peacekeeping, one of the major contributors to UN peacekeeping, do you think that could be something that stands in Nigeria's good stead, if that were to happen, the reform of the Security Council?
Well, in the discussions that we were engaged in as the member states negotiated the Pact for the Future, it was very clear that Africa's place in the Security Council was long overdue. The reforms of the Security Council long overdue. But member states will get to it. I believe they will. They've gotten nearer than they have before. And the discussion of the additional 2 seats for Africa was also tabled. This is something for the African Union to decide. Nigeria's role as a state on the continent is recognized. It has led on many different things and continues to do so. But it will be the African Union that makes that decision. And 54 states, we have a long way to go, as with the Security Council reform. So if it happened, does Nigeria deserve a place? I believe that it has a chance. But I also recognize that there are 53 other states that also...
Of course, I'm completely with that. Okay, so I wanted to give us a little bit of what the Secretary General is trying to do with the UN 80 initiative. Some progress. He still has, roughly 2 years to go.
Well, he has always said that we're going to work to the last day, and we will do that.
And that will be December 31st, 2026.
Yes, by the grace of God. So for us, it has been reforms from day one. There have been many things that have been put in our way that have slowed down some of this reform, but on the development, peace and security management, we have had. So building on the reforms and recognizing there has been a trend where multilateralism is being questioned, the funding of major activities of ours, from peacekeeping to the humanitarian development, overseas development assistance, ODA, has all been on the decline. In really looking at, are we fit for purpose for the expectations of the world today? Are the resources, could we be more efficient and more effective? Mandates that we have, which run into the hundreds, how are we implementing them? Is there more efficiency that can be gained there? So what we put forward was that, first of all, let's deal with the sudden cuts that we've had over the past, I would say, a couple of years. This is not just cuts that have been recent, but even from before. How do we deal with that and be able to cope with it? We presented that to member states. And then we said, let's look at the mandates, how to better implement them. Now there is a resolution where the member states have an ad hoc working group that is looking at how to better make the mandates more efficient. So for instance, on an issue, let's say on food security, we may have 5 or 6 mandates, very similar, but each one important in of itself. Do we need 5 reports or 1 report that reflects all 5 issues? How can we bring the efficiencies of large numbers of pages that could perhaps be summarized better, so that member states could work with them more easier? So it's about implementation of mandates and how to be more efficient. The third step was to look at our institutions and to say, can the UN present itself more effectively with structure changes? Mergers of agencies, funds and programs, not losing the mandates. But, it's like saying, I have a number of passengers. Can I have fewer vehicles? So that in the country, I'm better. First of all, I'm working better together, but I'm responding better together. So you'll see in his report that he's made, presentations of that. We may have 2 departments that have 2 units that are the same. Merge the units so that you benefit from one, efficiencies there, and more coherence. So it's about being fit for purpose to carry out the Paris Agreement, many of the political agreements, women, peace and security, youth, peace and security, the SDGs. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, and that takes me to the issue of the financing for development, including financing for climate change. It was seen that there's always a struggle on the part of the donors and people that make promises to keep up with the promises, especially climate change adaptation issues. Is there a strategy whereby we're going to have more faithfulness to those commitments, especially regarding climate change? I think there's over several hundreds of billions that have been, promised by developed nations.
1.3 trillion.
And, so, if that continues, don't you think if there's no faithfulness, that might affect the kind of, respect and regard and reputation, that people have for the international system generally?
Yes, I think there is a big reputational risk if we don't live up to the commitments that we've made, which is why we try to reinforce those with a few more actions in the pack for the future. Why we had the Seville conference where we came out with a consensus, which was almost impossible to do in these times of the geopolitical tensions. And it focused a lot on debt, which is really about some of the burdens that Africa carries, and how to better do a number of things that will put Africa in a better position, not only to solve the debt issues that we have, but when we are going to look for credit, that it is longer term. And that is less costly than we see around the world, and more effective. And I think that's what we're doing now, is looking for the implementation. On the financing side. You'll see a number of issues that the leadership of the G20, which is South Africa, has taken up. It is about how we capitalize better our MDBs so there is more resources. It's about the debt issue. It's about long-term finance, which needs to deal with credit rating agencies and how we are assessed. Right. But there is also the climate and financing climate. We've said 1.5 degree world is what we need. Or, as we are seeing already, climate is more intense, more frequent. Right. Every country is being touched. There are no borders to climate change. We need $4 trillion a year for the Sustainable Development Goals, which includes $1.3 trillion for climate. Where does it come from? And this is a mix that we need to look at. Investing in our countries is important so that we increase our revenue. We're able to do more. But we need to see the private sector. We need to see leveraging more money from the multilateral development banks. Right. $1 we put in the MDB will get us 5 to 7. So how do we do that to raise their ceilings? These are all the things we're moving on. And we have to move faster because the urgency and the challenges are growing faster than we are able to move. And I think that's where, there will be some trust deficit that we will have to overcome as we move forward. Okay. But I'm hopeful. I mean, we're going to LM for climate. We have to have NDCs that prove themselves in at least 35 countries, which are about 83% of our emissions. Okay. Nigeria is one. And Nigeria's just come forward with a really good NDC. So that's what we really want to see is, ambition. Fantastic.
So as I'm beginning to round up because of your time, as a woman, how do you think we can get more women included, not just in leadership, but in power?
Well, I mean, this is people in democracy.
Especially in Africa.
Yes, but I mean, we vote. We're democracies, right? Mm-hmm. And in democracies, women have to vote for women and men have to vote for women. And that space has to be created. Now, there is an environment in which it is very difficult to follow the political processes. And in many of our countries in Africa, for sure, we have put provisions that allow women to get in there so that they're established and then they can move. So a leg up so that we can begin to move together. No country will fully develop its potentials without the other half of the population. And we are missing. We are missing in Nigeria. We are missing in many places. But we do have role models. Rwanda is one. Even Somalia, that is, in conflict, has challenges, has got more women in their parliament than we have in my country. Oh, wow. So it's about men's attitudes changing. Yeah. It's about opening up that space from the local government all the way through to the national parliament. It's important because the world see this as a norm, that you will have a fair balance of women in the workplace, women in leadership. And leadership doesn't have to be the president, but it is of the parliament. It is of boards. Right. It is in, so your businesses. It is your permanent secretaries. Right. Here in the UN, yes, CSG is a man, but 50% of his management, 50% of the leadership of the UN is women. In the representation that we have in countries, in 131 countries of the UN, 50% are women. Actually, about 53% are women. Impressive. So we are showing the way. The African Union did it first. Half of its commissioners are women. And I think it's not a question of numbers. It's a question of what we bring to the table and how we can make life better. We attain our agency, our rights, but life is better when you bring a woman around a decision-making table. For peace, for business, in your house. Everything. In your home. So talking about the role of women, there is a bill in Nigeria that seems to make a bit of progress to say that women should have, dedicated seats in the National Assembly. What do you think about it? Right now, we have tried for decades to do it the same way that everyone else does it. There is just no space. And I think that we have to say that we have a commitment. I believe that the president believes in women in the parliament. His wife was in the parliament, the National Assembly. So, and better comes out of it.
Right.
Yes, I believe in these bills. I think that we should do that. It has become a norm and expectation that you have a better balance in your parliaments around the world.
Mm-hmm.
If Nigeria wants to see itself in leadership in many of the institutions we have, it's important for us to show that women matter in our country, that women can be part of the decision-making and in some of the highest offices, and particularly when we're representing people in our parliaments. Affirmative action, it's a good first concrete step. Allow us that first concrete step, and I can assure you that we'll be able to go forward in years to come, in the electorate. But as I say, it needs both women and men to vote for women.
Right. So how do you keep up with news from Nigeria?
What are you holding? A phone. So, I mean, I have family. All my family is in Nigeria. So on a daily basis, I hear what is happening on the ground. My colleagues, and the life that I've had there is, many decades. So
how do you think the country is doing?
I think that we have huge challenges, like every other African country on the continent. But are we doing the best that we can do about it? We're making the best efforts possible. And when I see what we're doing for the economy, how we're trying to fight the insecurity in the country. Remember, the insecurity in Nigeria is not without the border and the whole regional impacts of it. Right. When we are trying to fight climate. So I think that, the efforts are commendable. Do we need to do more and better? Absolutely. Who doesn't? Yeah. And it's our job to get behind it and to support the best way that we know how.
Right. Thank you so much for coming to Inside Sources, and thank you for welcoming us to your office, and thank you for the great work you do in the UN, and thank you for being a voice for women and for development around the world.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. This is your home.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Inside Sources will be right back with the next segment.